Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely, Eure, joined by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. We have a lot to talk about today. USC getting blown out in the Coliseum by the Oregon Ducks. In the topics, we have Clay Helton's era ending. Is this the beginning of the end, guys? I think USC fans hope that it is. So we'll talk about that, the future of the program, and maybe get into the game a little bit, talk about the specifics. And we'll talk about hashtag special teams. Ryan, you wrote an article about USC special teams, specifically about kickoff and kickoff return. You even asked Clay Helton about it in his Sunday night conference call. So we'll get your take on that, Ryan.
Sure.
And then, like I say, every week, free therapy, but I think this week it stands true more than the other weeks. You can call us live at 512-4-TUNNEL. And we'll take your comments, questions, and concerns, as well as wherever you're watching this. I believe we are live on YouTube and Periscope. Working on Facebook. Not sure if that's live yet, but we'll get that going. But you can also tweet at us, hashtag TunnelVision. But, guys, a lot to talk about today. Ryan, where do you want to start?
Well,
yeah,
I don't know. Like, if this is really going to be therapeutic for people, our friends over at Raina Troy, usually you'll get the at least the rant on the CarCast after the game, and she was sort of calm. I think people now were worried after every time USC wins a game. What does this mean? Is this some signature win for Clay Helton? Certainly beating Oregon, and the way USC looked in the beginning of that game felt like, wow, this could be Utah all over again. You know, obviously that wasn't the case. Rewatching the game this morning, there's 3 minutes left, or 2 minutes and 38 seconds left, and USC's winning in the first half, and USC's winning like it's 10-7, which are like, wow, you kind of forget. Like at the end, you know, that 56-7 run was insane. But before that, you know, USC was doing pretty good. So I think some of this is sort of like, all right, people are just over it. They know the end is near. When is it going to happen? A lot of people wanted to see some sort of change today. They're switching into a new athletic director. We have been told at some point. So, you know, that's a big deal. You need that to happen really probably before anything else does. So I think, I don't know if it's going to be therapeutic, Keely. It's just going to be more about, this is sort of the expected result. Do you really care what happens in the last 3 games? Yeah, you want to beat UCLA. You want to win these games and stuff, but fans just want to see what happens next. It's sort of like the recruiting thing. Like, people want to know who the next great player is. They want to know what's going on in recruiting. Then they get on campus and sometimes they don't care as much. Right now, they just want to know what's next as far as the head coach goes. They're not necessarily concerned if this season ends up 5-7 or 8-4.
But that result was not expected that way.
No, the result wasn't.
Not at all.
Not in the shellacking that USC got.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it and you go, it's 10-0. It should be at least 14-0 when the defense gives you the ball at the 8-yard line. You need to punch that in. You know that, and I said it at the time I tweeted it out that if you're going to upset a top 10 team, now whether you want to say, I know earlier this year when USC beat Utah, people were flipping, that's not an upset. USC should beat Utah at home. Well, Utah's ranked in the top 10 at the time, and you're not ranked at all. So, yes, it is an upset.
And you had your third-string quarterback.
Yeah, and the same thing here against Oregon. Yes, it would have been an upset. They were favored in the game, Oregon was. So, if you want to upset a top 10 team, you have to take advantage of things, especially early in the game. You know, you have to put pressure on a team that is favored. And USC didn't do that. They let them off the hook there, so they take a 10-0 lead. But then they're driving the ball. They move the ball well the first half.
Yeah.
You know, I said this after the game, and it's hard to separate these two things. And some of you guys may hate that I say this, but you look at just the offensive play and the defensive play. If you can take the turnovers out, now you can't really do that, but if you can take the turnovers out, USC's offense did better than Oregon's offense. USC's defense was better than Oregon's defense in the first half.
Yeah.
So
like way better. Like,
so
I think it was like 113 like offensive yards for Oregon, and they had 112 yards in penalties. Like it was great. Like stat sheet wise, USC won a lot of the game. They had the more yards throughout most of the game.
So, of course, you would expect that USC would be down 28-17 and a half.
Right.
Because you gave up a special teams touchdown and a defensive touchdown to Oregon. So those two things dramatically swing the event, plus the other turnovers. You know, you got the ball inside the 10-yard line, you fumble the ball, give it to them. You know, you're driving the ball and you throw the interception off of Drake London's hands. You know, those things – all led up to it because they scored on, I think, 3 of the 4 turnovers, at least.
Yeah, 21 straight points. They scored 8 straight touchdowns. If you guys remember the Rose Bowl, that Penn State scored 7 straight touchdowns. 7 straight touchdowns. This game was 8 straight touchdowns, which is crazy. So 3 straight plays because Oregon scored a touchdown, and then you had the pick 6 and then kickoff return or whatever, back to back to back. Penn State scored 4 straight touchdowns, like 4 plays in a row. I forget what it was, but it was like touchdown. It was like bookend and stuff. It was like insane. So
Saquon Barkley, crazy.
But 8 in a row, 8 drives in a row giving up touchdowns. So it was like punt, interception, punt, then touchdown, all the way through. So just crazy. I mean, you can't do that. And USC did. But the end of the first half was insane. USC was winning with like a little over 2.5 minutes left. Oregon punches it in, pick 6, USC scores, kickoff return for a touchdown. It's like that. The end of that half was just absolutely crazy. And that just looked to me like it wasn't a buttoned up team that was trying to beat a top 10 team.
I mean, there's 2 really, really big plays in the game. The targeting of Isaiah Polamau, I think, changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because that's just another body that goes out in that secondary. Now you have C.J. Pollard, who is an older guy but is inexperienced, and Chase Williams are side by side, and they're making the calls in the back end of that. And Oregon made some adjustments to throw a lot of quick short passes. Besides the touchdowns, in the second half touchdowns that Justin Herbert threw, he may have thrown 1 ball beyond 5 yards. Like that was the only time he actually threw the ball down the field. It was just quick stuff because they knew USC was blitzing a ton, and that was what was working for USC early because Oregon was trying to attack deep, and there were opportunities there. And Justin Herbert's not a great quarterback. He misses the throw over the middle that Greg Johnson knocks away. I don't care about his numbers.
A lot of people disagree with you.
I don't care about his numbers. He was not a great quarterback, especially early in that game. He had some bad throws in that. He throws the ball right to Isaiah Polamau. That the numbers look really good as far as completion percentage and stuff because he was throwing the ball 3 yards.
Yeah.
Now he made some good throws, and this is the same thing I've said leading into the game was that he can make some special throws. He's not consistent at all, and he struggles with some other throws that he should be much better at. What happened is he didn't have to do it because their run game woke up a little bit in the second half, and then they went play action. He was 10 of 10 on play action.
Wow.
It went for like 130, 140 yards. So you look at his stats and you go, well, what was he not on play action? It was like 11 of 19. He wasn't that great. But they were able, once they got the lead, you're expecting them to run the ball more. Now you can go play action. And that's when they started killing USC, killing USC's defense. And we talked about it before. It looked like before the show started, it looked like they quit for the first time.
Yeah.
In that second half.
That's what I was going to jump in with is that the one thing we talked about last week is the only thing we know about this team throughout this whole season was that they have fight. They don't quit. But it seemed like last night, that was the one thing that was prevalent is that they quit. They gave up. And we're already getting flooded with a lot of questions of did something happen in the locker room at halftime? What happened with the dynamics of the team? What did you see from this team? What have you heard about what happened in this team? I know we've heard some stuff, but people just want to know what led to kind of the second half collapse.
Yeah, I think it's sort of more of a floodgate sort of breaking open situation where, what was the narrative going into this, which I didn't agree with the entire time is, we control our own destiny and all that stuff. And then once that became apparent, like at halftime, you knew that wasn't going to be the case anymore. Like you knew who was going to win that football game. I don't think anyone in the Coliseum thought, well, you know what, they're right there. They're going to come back and, that kickoff return, I think, took the air out of any kind of the sails that USC had. And I feel like, we've heard that there was some arguing, some confrontations going on in the locker room. I mean, I know, once, things happen where the defense gives you the ball inside the 10 and you're not able to score. I think there's going to be some
Frustration.
Frustration between the different groups, and then with the special teams, and giving up a kickoff return for a touchdown after it was a really great offensive drive capped off by Michael Pittman's just willing his way into the end zone on that one. You could see where there would be some frustrations. We've seen some stuff on the sidelines. We've heard things about that. I don't know all the details or whatever, but it seemed like it all came to a head. And at that point, you didn't see the same kind of fight, to me, in the second half. And I think that was more apparent when, hey, we don't control our own destiny anymore. You could still kind of, that delusion of, hey, we can win the Rose Bowl and stuff, seemed like it went out the window. That's my opinion of what was going on. And then you just didn't see the same kind of effort in the second half.
Yeah, I think the second biggest play besides Paul Miles targeting was the kickoff return, because you've given away a ton of the momentum when you were up 10-0, and they've taken a 21-10 lead, but you fought back, you rally down the field, take advantage of a couple penalties. The Pac-12 officials again were terrible last night on both ways.
Yeah, both ways.
Calling a double unsportsmanlike conduct on a kid. Now I know he was up in some. He wasn't even in the ref. He wasn't looking at the ref. He was yelling past him. Those type of things, like those are very Pac-12 calls. The BS pass interference call that USC was awarded on the Tyler Vaughns.
Oh yeah,
where he didn't get touched at all. And then
that guy makes a really great play, bats the ball away, and they call pass interference.
Never touches Tyler Vaughn.
And then Tyler Vaughn gets tripped, and then
he gets not tripped. He gets hit. The safety seeks him out and hits him because they were trying to do some different things, trying to throw USC's routes off, and the ball's in the air. It should be a pass interference. It goes for interception. It
was a really nice one-handed interception too, but that shouldn't have happened, obviously. Yeah.
So the Pac-12 refs were terrible, but it's 21-17. You've driven down. Great play there from Slovis to Pittman. They're playing some bracket coverage. It was the similar thing. Troy Dye comes out and hits Michael Pittman to try to throw him off his route, and then they have a safety coming over as well, and they fit it in the window. It was a great play by Slovis to Pittman there. Touchdown. 21-17. You've got momentum back. You can go into halftime. Okay, we got to do this. We got to make some changes here. We've been moving the ball on them, blah, blah, blah. You've got confidence going in the second half.
Yeah, it's 20 seconds left. I decide, okay, I'm just going to try to meet some people at halftime, so I, take off. And then you hear some cheers. I'm like, what the heck happened?
Yeah, I was telling Keely, I was like, okay, as soon as this kickoff, because I was going to get some photos of guys running down a kickoff, I'm going to run in and dump all my photos and stuff. And then I was like, well, never mind. USC's going to get the ball back. And who knows if they got the ball back at the 50, so they had a chance to do something there too. But that kickoff return changed everything.
Yes.
So why didn't you squib kick it? Why didn't you pooch kick it? Why didn't you watch the broadcast after rewatching it today, and Urban Meyer is on the broadcast.
They crushed them.
And he's like, why would you do that? You got to sky kick it. You got to squib kick it. You can't give the ball back to him. And he was also crushing, to an extent, Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson, who were saying, well, Justin Herbert's got a really big arm, so maybe that's why they did it. They're trying to justify it a little bit. And he's like, no, it doesn't matter. You play the percentages. You don't do it. Now, I will say, I've had conversations with John Baxter, I don't know, over the last 3 years or so, and he hates it when other teams kick away from their returners. And he has said previously, he's like, I would never do that. And it's like, well...
Is that like a courtesy? Like, what? I don't get it. Yeah.
Like, he just thinks it's, that's...
Like unsportsmanlike?
To an extent, yeah. I think that's how he feels about it. But, so they decide to kick it and trust their kickoff coverage unit. And Clay Helton was saying that the kickoff coverage unit has been doing great, but their kickoff specialist, Alex Stadhouse, has 4 tackles already on the season. He's had multiple in games recently, which tells me that the kickoff coverage unit's not doing great because that guy should never be making a tackle.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, because I was going to say, how much of it is just about the coverage unit not giving 100%? Because I was on the field, and it looked like they were kind of going 80. Kind of, it's the end of the half. It won't be a full effort from Oregon. I just didn't feel like they were in it as much as they could have been.
On the conference call, Clay Helton said that the one guy didn't stay in his lane, which I think that's a pretty. If one guy messes up on a kickoff and you give up a touchdown, I mean that seems like there should be a little bit of redundancy put in there, I guess. But Alex Stadhouse, the kicker, I don't know where he was, but he was. Usually he's around there, like he's kind of filling that hole. He was having to run sideways, and they're just. I mean, I don't think anybody touched him.
He's not getting touched.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you don't see USC squib kick or stuff a lot, but I like those situations where you do something different. You pop it up to the 20. What you used to do, and we'll talk about this later, but before they changed the rule last year, you saw a lot of kind of pop-up kickoffs because you're trying to get people to return it from like the 1 or the 2 or the inside the 5, and then you can stop them before the 25, something like that. Anything, and sometimes they let the ball bounce and you can jump on it, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that can happen in a kickoff. But just the straightaway normal kickoff seemed like a bad idea, and that, hindsight's 2020, but it didn't seem like a good idea from the beginning.
On the whole, we've talked about this whole season. Clay Helton has kind of put return to the Pac-12 championship or bust mentality on this team. Now they don't control their own destiny. They need some help from the conference, is what Clay Helton said last night. But what do they really have to play for? I know Clay Helton was asked, what's the difference between this year's team and last year's team, the team that lost the last 3 games of the season. And he said that this team has more fight in them, which is debatable given what we saw last night. But if you're the players, if you're the coaches, what are you really playing for at this point of the season?
I think it's different. For the coaches, I mean, you're trying to fight for your job still, which I think is a lost cause. I don't think that matters. But, for the players, there's games you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose to Cal again, You don't want to lose to UCLA, obviously. That's something you got to hear about. I mean, they heard about all that last year. UCLA had 2 wins, and they end up beating USC. So you don't want to do that. You obviously don't want to end on another 3-game losing streak. They were 5-4 last year, finished 5-7. ASU, they're recruiting pretty well in Southern California. You don't want to lose to ASU on the road because Herm Edwards hired a bunch of guys that have Southern California ties. I think there's real reasons you want to play, but it's not the big picture reasons. It's not. I think when they keep focusing on you can win the Pac-12 South, it just seems like, first of all, that's such a low bar. You've changed the narrative. Like if your goal is, hey, we're going to try to make the college football playoff and we can do it, and you get 1 loss and you're like Oregon or Utah still talking about it, like that makes sense. But you're like not even in control of your own destiny in the South, and like UCLA is. I just don't think that's, for a USC program, that's not something you should be striving for. And so it's more about, what? We have really good players on this team. We've lost 4 games. I don't think we should have lost any of them. We want to go out and just win these next ones for the players, for the seniors, for everybody. And I think those are more realistic reasons of what you're, to still talk about we could win the Pac-12 South championship. It just seems like that was such a low bar to begin with. And then what are you even looking at for?
Yeah. Now, I know last night's loss is embarrassing on the whole for USC's football program, but how detrimental is it in the recruiting aspect? I know Oregon has been kind of cleaning up after UCLA and USC in their down years, and Mario Cristobal was kind of hanging around the Coliseum a little bit long last night, but what does this do for recruiting given how much Oregon has been a powerhouse in that sense?
Yeah, hashtag Cali Flock. Certainly it's a big deal. There's a reason Mario Cristobal would do every interview and walk up and down the tunnel, and USC had a lot of recruits there. There was one official visitor. There was a bunch of other unofficial guys, people that were looking at Oregon. Oregon has a bunch of 2020, 21 guys already committed from Southern California. It's a big deal. But we knew USC was going to be in the tank as far as recruiting goes because they're number 10 in the conference right now out of 12. We've never seen something like this in November. They're number 64 in the country. That wasn't going to change unless USC made some kind of run and went to the Rose Bowl and Clay Helton was safe, or they go in another direction and get another coach. So to me, it's a big deal, but if USC goes out and hires this huge name person, the Urban Meyers of the world, somebody along those lines, then all those guys that are committed to Oregon, I think the game changes. Like now, maybe not for this class, but certainly for future ones, that changes the game. So you needed something to change the game. Now it looks like it's going to be another head coach. You get a powerful head coach in there. I think that changes the recruiting game.
And you had tweeted about this earlier, Ryan, with the early signing period and how much that changed the landscape of recruiting. How much does that change the timing of universities making decisions, making a decision like moving on from a head coach? I mean, Willie Taggart was fired from FSU today. I mean, how much does this all play into it? Yeah,
less than 2 years. They're going to owe him like over $20 million in buyout money, but they know you can't wait anymore. It was different. It certainly was different before when February was a signing period. You could fire a guy mid-January and figure things out. You can't do that anymore. If you know this is not a relationship thing where you just kind of let it linger, you have to go now. And I think everyone at USC knows the direction you have to go. Now, it's weird at USC because they don't have their athletic director in there yet, but I think that's why it was important to get somebody as soon as possible as the athletic director. Then you make the decision as soon as possible on the head coach, and you just do it. And you move on, you rip the Band-Aid off, and you got to move on. And you start interviewing people. There's going to be competition. You already got Florida State. You have another traditional power. There's only so many schools in the country that can win a national championship. Florida State's one of them. USC's one of them. So that's already a powerful school that's going to be, competing for a coach that you may want. They already have a leg up now. So I don't think you have any time to waste. The early signing period changed the game as far as it's not about being a nice guy and letting people, finish out the season. It's like, if you know that's not the right guy, do it now no matter what.
Well, as far as timing, we heard reports about USC's athletic director on Friday. No official word from USC. What's your sense on that timing, Ryan?
Yeah, so Mike Bowen, the University of Cincinnati athletic director, he was at Colorado, had a few hires there, was fired, and then went to Cincinnati. The reviews at Cincinnati have been pretty good. To me, as far as like how good of a candidate he is, I didn't know a lot about him before. Done some research, and I've definitely seen some mixed things, but just the fact that he's been an athletic director before, has his own system, all that stuff is super important. Doesn't know the fight song, all that. I think you improve the athletic department instantly. And if you want to, and I don't think it was going to be easy to go out and get a home run athletic director hire right away. I think you needed to get a kind of bridge athletic director, someone that's going to just fix all the mess that's in the athletic department. And it's going to be a big mess. It's going to be a big job, and show everyone again that, hey, this is actually a really top 5 athletic program. Then, however, when that tenure is over, you can go out and the next guy you get could be a superstar. I think it's going to be really tough to bring in a superstar right away because of all the mess. It's 25 years of former football players that had no experience. I think you can go for a head coach, though, that is a superstar right away. You can do that because it's still the USC brand as far as football goes. I think the athletic director side is different. We had heard as early as Monday. We were talking to Gerard Martinez offline after this. You've seen USC kind of drag their feet on things like that. I don't think they can afford to, but we don't know. Until it's signed, we've seen people back out of deals before. We've seen people get cold feet. So until it's signed, you don't know. But as early as tomorrow, we could know.
We'll see.
We shall see, indeed.
But they need somebody. They need somebody in there. And I wouldn't freak out if you're like, oh, it's this guy's. If it's someone that's been an athletic director at a couple of different places, at a Power 5 program, had done some good things, and isn't a USC person, that's so much better than whatever USC has now. I don't know. He could be a great one. Like, Mike Bowen could come in and be great. He could be filet mignon, He might be moldy bread. But what USC's been eating for the last 25 years is sawdust. So even if he's moldy bread, it's a big upgrade over sawdust. It could be filet mignon. It's probably somewhere in between. But whatever it is, it's way better than whatever USC's had, which is basically sawdust.
What a food analogy, Ryan.
Pow, pow, pow. You guys wanted the food analogies.
Except I don't think sawdust will actually get you sick, whereas moldy bread could get you sick.
True, it's a good point.
But you need to be sustained. This comes from, man, if you want to go back to the St. Petersburg siege during World War II, like 900 days, they were like eating sawdust in their bread and stuff. It was not pretty.
Isn't that lowering the bar, Ryan, though? Because you make it sound like anyone with competence is good enough.
No, I've lowered the bar because you have to go there. Now, I mean, he's done some good things. Like if you look at Luke Fickell, the football coach there, he went 11-1 last year. They've lost one game so far this year. At Colorado, it was sort of a mixed bag. I mean, they bring in Dan Hawkins, which didn't work out that well. But I mean, he was really successful at Boise State. You could see. I've heard from a few different people that John Embry, they brought him in, and he was more of a former football player that the kind of boosters and everybody forced upon him. Now you could argue like, well, who lets that happen to get it forced upon them? I don't think he wanted to hire Embry, so that might have been a call over his head, whatever. And then, for Mike McIntyre, he's done pretty well. It's not like it's been a great program. They've had some decent things happen. The basketball hire has been good there. He's had some good hires. His basketball coach ended up getting the job at UCLA. So I think, they've showed some competence hiring and firing coaches. I think that makes a big deal. He seems like someone that cares about the athletic department. You watch some of his videos. So I don't think I'm not setting the bar too low, but just someone that's competent is so much better than what USC had, because everyone that USC's hired in the last 25 years has been like, here, come on in, and this is how we do things. You needed someone that can come in and go, here's how we're going to do things, because they've done it somewhere else and we're successful. That's all USC had to do, and they've avoided that at all costs.
Yeah. Yep. Well, the phones have been ringing off the hooks.
I know. We got a lot of Periscope things,
We
too.
have a lot of comments coming
Should we
in.
do that?
Thanks to everybody. Yes, Ryan, what's up?
The the hashtag special teams. Can I go on my little rant?
Go on
that?
your
I
special teams
felt like
rant, and then
Shotgun
we'll
hasn't
go.
said anything.
We've had 18 callers so far, so
Oh my gosh.
I know. So
Yeah.
let's go into it, Ryan.
Okay, just real quick.
Special
check out the
teams
site,
rant.
USCFootball.com. Yes, the obvious and glaring thing is giving up a punt, the kickoff return for a touchdown on special teams. But one of the things I've been watching over the time has been, man, that's another kickoff return that USC's returned and failed to get to the 25. And I'm just over and over. And it kept happening. I'm like, this can't be good. I was asking Shotgun to check the numbers. We both were looking at the numbers and stuff. So it turns out, if you remember 2012, they changed the kickoff rule. So if you fair catch it or it's downed, it comes out to the 25 instead of the 20. Then coaches change their mindset. They're like, we're going to pooch up high and try to get it inside the 5 and then try to tackle the person before they get to the 25. So then they changed the rule last year, 2018. If you want to fair catch it inside the 5 or wherever before the 25, it'll come out to the 25. So you don't have to return those anymore. So returns went down about 900. So it went from like 4,700 kickoff returns in FBS 2017 to 3,800 in 2018. So everyone's returning less. Well, this year, USC's bucked that trend. They're returning more than anyone in the Power 5. They've returned 35 kicks already through 9 games, and they mostly haven't been successful. That first one, or in the first game, Velus Jones took it back for a touchdown. But since then, there's only been 3 other kickoffs that have been out beyond the 26. So they're about 68% of the time, they're not getting beyond the 25. And it's like, you're really hurting yourself with field position. So I just kind of compiled the numbers and everything. You can check it out on USCFootball.com. I asked Clay Helton about it, and he's like, well, you got that threat with Velus Jones, but it was sort of like, I mean, I remember being a kid playing Little League, and I think I hit a home run in my first game, and then I was trying to hit a home run for the rest of the time, and I was like striking out a lot more and stuff. I feel like that's what USC's doing. They're trying to hit that home run, but they're striking out a lot of the time.
I mean, it's one kickoff return for a touchdown in 3 years with Velus Jones back there. It's not just this year. It's been 3 years now. It's not like he's a Dory Jackson.
And that was against Fresno State, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like he was a Dory Jackson. Like, a Dory Jackson is a special talent. Reggie Bush, when he was returning kicks and punts, that's special talent. They're making guys miss, and you say, if Reggie can get the ball in his hands, then go for it.
Right.
Even if we don't block it great, he might still make something special happen. Velus Jones has really good speed. Velus Jones needs the other 10 guys in front of him to block on the play and open up a hole for him. And he's not getting many holes. That's been one of the biggest issues. I don't even blame Velus Jones. Whether he should be bringing it out or not, I think that's on the coaches. So I wouldn't blame Velus for because some people keep saying, well, he's not playing on offense, so he wants to return every kick. Well, they would tell him, no, stay in the end zone or we're replacing you if they wanted him to stay in the end zone. So it's not Velus Jones' fault. He's trying to run, and there's just nothing there. I mean, there was one he returned like the 13 or 14 yesterday. He gets to like the 10-yard line, and there's already a swarm of people right in front of him, which tells you they're not blocking well enough up in front of him to give him room to get going. And, it's not been a good endeavor. The numbers point out you have the 100-yard one, tremendous return there. That was really big in that Fresno State game. However, after that, you got what? 133-yarder and one.
And the second best return is by Stephen Carr. Like, it's not even by Velus Jones. And there was a fumble. So there was a fumble, I think, that evens out the touchdown. But yeah, it's a mess. I asked Clay Helton about it. He said John Baxter, he always has confidence in John Baxter and all that stuff. But it's just, I just think it's a poor philosophy. They have been not returning as many the last couple games, but they need to just fair catch them or let it go over their head and just get it at the 25. I've been saying that for weeks, and the numbers prove that that's the right strategy.
Yep. Alrighty, let's go to our callers because they keep flooding in. If you are calling, just a general heads up, just keep it short just so we can run through all our callers. So thank you for calling. We appreciate it. Let's go to our first caller.
And we got a lot of comments, sorry.
Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is John from California, and I'm just curious, for the USC coaches, do they make halftime adjustments? Because from first half to second half, Oregon's defensive coordinator definitely made some adjustments, and the offensive coordinator definitely made some in terms of personnel. And I'm just also wondering, is USC prep for every guy on the depth chart? Because even though, for Oregon, number 33 didn't play, but number 22 did, both guys are still on the depth chart as horse. So does the coaching prep for every guy on the chart in certain situations. Thanks for the call, by the way.
Thanks. Really cutting out there. It's hard to
Yeah.
tell.
He said things about adjustments. Does it seem like the coaches do offensive and defensive adjustments at the half?
But there was also a
And
bunch of personnel questions too.
something about
Something about the depth chart.
yeah.
I think he's referencing Oregon's depth chart with 33 being Cyrus Lichio. And I think he's listed as a starter for Oregon.
He
and
did.
barely was used in that.
No, he's been more of a short yardage back.
Yeah.
He started the game against Washington State because C.J. Verdell got banged up. But they've used you see Dye back there. They've used a bunch of guys. But Verdell, didn't start the game against Washington State and ran for 250 yards or something. So, but he's been the guy that's listed as starter has been more of a kind of a vulture around the goal line.
As far as adjustments, I think that Graham Harrell didn't sound like he needed to make a bunch of adjustments because he felt like they were moving the ball really well in the first half. One of the things I did notice is those first two drives, in particular, they moved guys around a lot. Michael Pittman was in 4 different spots the first 4 plays of the game. As the game progressed, that disappeared.
Huh.
Yeah.
And they stopped using different, just kind of the more unique formations and stuff that they hadn't shown, and they went back to some of the basic stuff. You saw more H back on a couple drives in a row. Just some different things in the second half that just seemed like, all right, we've used this batch of plays that we've devised for this game, and now we're just going back to what we've done all season, rather than throwing some of those plays in there as well and mixing and matching, the old and the new. It just seemed like they kind of settled on what they were doing. Now, again, the offense moved the ball. If they don't turn the ball over, it could be completely different.
Right.
But you got to put the ball in the end zone. You can move it and move it and move it, but if you don't go in the end zone, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So the adjustment has to be, what plays can we give Keaton Slovis where the offensive line is going to protect him well enough, and he's not going to get hit when he's throwing, and he's not going to turn the ball over. You kind of feel bad for the stat line of Keaton Slovis because you got a tipped ball off Drake London's hand. Wasn't a great throw. But then you got one where the receiver was hit. He throws it. Nice interception on his play. He gets hit from behind. He fumbles the ball. And even the one that he threw that was the pick six, Clay Helton said his hand was hit a little bit, so that might have played into it.
But he didn't see the defender on that. I don't know what if his head wasn't hit, is he maybe it's incomplete.
So looking at the back end, there's a very small window that he can throw it right on the sideline to Tyler Vaughn's. But it's not a throw he should have made, regardless. But I think he felt the pressure because he had to step up there. Kayvon Thibodeau was coming off the edge, and he stepped up into the pocket, and Thibodeau got a little bit of him. So, they've got to figure out that's the adjustment they have to make. Not, we're moving the ball really well. What can we do to protect him? Now, you're not running the ball a lot. That was completely by design because of the limited numbers, at the running back depth. They're throwing a lot of wide receiver screens and stuff to try to help out the run game, kind of be a extra run game. But what can you do to mitigate the turnovers? And that's something they never figured out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real quick, I don't think the adjustments were made on the offensive side. It was pretty consistent besides the turnovers. I didn't like that he threw 42 times or whatever it was in the first half. Defensively, though, the pressure that they were bringing early on, forcing sacks and tackles for loss, and then it sort of changed. I think part of it was that the offense was giving up the ball too, but it looked to me like the Oregon Ducks did make a bunch of adjustments there on offense, and they kind of stopped what USC's defense was doing very well at the beginning of the game.
Yep. Alrighty, let's move on to our next caller. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hello.
Just my question is
Look.
basically around Clay Helton. I know you guys talked about it a little bit already, but given that Willie Taggart got fired, why wouldn't USC try and get ahead of everybody else and try and get Urban Meyer? Because in my opinion, it's Urban Meyer bust at this point. Thoughts on that?
Thanks for the call. Man, we're a lot of bad connections here.
I think the biggest difference between USC and FSU right now is they have an athletic director.
Yeah.
And I think that's playing into the timeline. So if Bone is the guy and proves to be the guy they hire, then you might see something happen quickly. Maybe. It's hard to say because, is the guy going to come in and his second day on the job, he's going to make a big move like that? I don't know.
I think you almost have to. There's no other reason that you were being hired than to fix football. That's number one, number two, number three, number four. You don't have to look about anything else. So if you're being talked to, that's the most important thing. And I agree. Urban Meyer is the home run hire of all home run hires. There's some people that would say, I'm not saying it's the right or wrong. I mean, to me, if you're going to hire someone for football reasons, it's the biggest no-brainer ever. Like, that's the person you hire. There's only so many coaches that have won a championship. He's won at 2 different places. Home run. Do you want to, I mean, is there some baggage there from what he said? He didn't have NCAA violations, but, he's had players get in trouble. Everyone's had that. He's also had
coaches get in trouble.
His coach on his staff. So certainly that's, in this kind of movement. I haven't seen a lot of protests at Fox. He's been doing a great job there. I mean, do people say, I'm not going to watch the Fox pregame show because Urban Meyer's, it doesn't seem to be a big deal. But if he gets hired as head coach, is that a different story? But I think he's the home run. You can argue either way. But if USC is serious about winning football games, he would be the first person on my list.
I just think that's the biggest difference there, and why the timeline at USC is still just kind of a big question mark, because you don't have the person that's supposed to be hiring a head coach or firing a head coach in position.
Right.
So if you're going to make those moves, who makes them, type of thing. And so that's why I don't know if or when a move will be made. You would want to do it now if that was the decision made because of the recruiting and stuff and everything, how everything this calendar is pushed up. But without the person that's supposed to be making that move, it's a big gray area.
For sure. I mean, what's the timeline is how fast do you expect someone to be named athletic director and then make their first decision, hiring and firing, etc.? I mean, that seems like a really quick turnaround, whoever it is.
Yeah, I mean, my guess
they make that move too. That still is not.
Don't say that, Shotgun. That's not
the logical explanations have not been credible at USC.
True.
I mean, 5-7, we thought that was it for Clay Helton last year, and
Right. We never know because it's USC and all kinds of crazy things. It happens. There's always something crazy going on. But thanks for the call.
Yes, thank you for the call. Let's go to our next caller. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, how you doing? This is Corey from Ohio. I just had a question about recruiting. Basically, I seen the halftime show, and Reggie Bush was kind of pissed off, and he had a good point where, coaches were continuously putting the players in position to fail, and I just wanted to know if you guys agree with that. Thanks. Right on.
Thank you, Corey.
It's not really recruiting, I guess. But I think Reggie did mention recruiting.
Did you hear kind of Reggie's rant?
I
at
did,
halftime?
yeah. Uh-huh.
So I didn't really agree with it.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I think that it's an air raid offense. They're going to throw the ball a lot, and because you're on your 4-string running back, then you're not going to give him too much of a workload. Now, in the first quarter, they ran, I think it was 26 plays, and they ran the ball 9 times. So that's 33% of the time, or a little bit over 33% of the time, 40%, somewhere in there. I didn't think that was terrible. I thought they ran the ball when they needed to. I thought that they went away from the run a little too much at times, though. Yeah. I thought they were just spans where it was like, have they run the ball recently? Have they run the ball in the last 8 minutes of a quarter or so? And you'd be like, not really. And Keenan Kristen he ran for, I think, 5.3 yards a carry.
He broke some tackles this game, too, which he wasn't doing before.
Yeah. And that was the thing. That I saw in those first couple of drives. That was when Amon-Ra St. Brown had a carry. That's when he was in the backfield a little bit more. Those things disappeared as the game went on.
Yeah.
So I was kind of those things I was kind of curious about.
Yeah, I think Brady Quinn was getting on Reggie some of that too. But they have run the ball. I mean, it's almost been 50-50 up until the last 2 games when they had their top 3 running backs out. So I mean, I think Reggie was a little off on that, but it wasn't really impacting. I don't think that was impacting recruiting, because you're not running the football enough. They've run the ball plenty up until the last 2 games when all the guys were hurt. Could they have used Dominic Davis more? No, he went out with a concussion in this one. So they could have used, like you said, Amon-Ra St. Brown a little bit more. But to me, it was more about you're going to have to throw the ball more. I don't know if they needed to break USC's all-time record. 57 throws in the game for Keaton Slovis. He broke Todd Marinovich's record. He threw for 55 times on the road in 1989 against Notre Dame. I thought it was a little too much, but I don't think that has any correlation to recruiting. The recruiting stuff is because USC's in this purgatory right now, waiting to see what the future of the program is. That's what's hurting recruiting.
Yeah, a school like Oregon is trying to take advantage.
Yeah, 100% taking advantage. And you're seeing the Alabamas and Clemson. Everyone's taking advantage of picking out the best guys in Southern California. You hire someone, I think you can hire some good coaches. The one other thing with Urban Meyer is you're probably going to stop that from happening, just like Pete Carroll did. Like his main thing was, we're going to keep everyone here in Southern California, make it cool to be here. It's the Sean Codys of the world. They would have gone to Miami or Notre Dame or something like that. Pete Carroll's like, nope, you guys are staying here, and then everyone starts staying home. Now they're not, because USC is this wounded animal, and if you get a guy like Urban Meyer, that's the first thing that he would want to change.
Yep. Thanks for the call. I'm going to dip into questions because we have so many flooding in, but we'll go back to our full call queue in a second. Speaking of Urban Meyer, we had a question from Sports Talk with Troy on YouTube that said, if Urban Meyer is such a great coach, why isn't he still at Ohio State or Florida?
Health and scandal, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, scandal has not been the direct cause of it, but there has been some scandal there, and he has decided to leave soon after, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Florida did not want him to go. Ohio State did not really want him to go. I mean, it's not like he was kicked out of those places. He's a great coach because he's won championships at multiple places. And listen to him talk football on Fox. He's really freaking good at what he does. I mean, he for him to be his first year doing that, you see some of these first year analysts that it's painful sometimes. He's really good at it.
Yep.
He's also a master manipulator, from what his previous players will tell you.
A master manipulator. He gets play.
That
Yeah.
can be good or bad.
I mean, he went 12-0 at Utah. So I mean, that's he's everywhere he's gone, he's won. So you can argue what all the other stuff was, but I wouldn't argue anything about would he be a good football coach.
True. We already touched on this a little bit, but P. Luke says, wouldn't it be smart to let Clay Helton go now and give the new coach time to recruit for the first signing day? You'd probably have to have an athletic director in place to do that first.
It would be smart, but still a lot of question marks with USC's above the head coach.
Yeah, that's tough to turn things around. I think you just want to get the process going as quickly as possible. Like it's really just if you can't hesitate anymore. I think in the past people have known, and they've, for whatever reasons that you're trying to be nice to the families or whatever, and you just don't want to. You can't do it anymore because the early signing period just moved everything up so fast. And USC's recruiting class is the worst we've ever seen. I started covering this team in 1996. This is the worst. So you got to try to fix that somehow, or you're going to leave this big hole in your roster.
Yep.
Last year there was the worst rank ever, and it was number 20 in the modern recruiting rankings. Right now they're at 64, 65.
Yeah, so way worse than last year.
Wow. Apollo says, why was there no emergency podcast for the debacle last night?
What's an emergency? I mean, what's the emergency? Like,
It's that analogy you had, Ryan, a couple weeks ago about the couple that's fighting, and then when you don't really care anymore, that's kind of when you know.
yeah. Like, I mean, I think if you get blown out by like Cal or something, like that could be an emergency at this point. But at this point, losing to Oregon wasn't like, I don't think anybody was shocked.
Sure.
I mean, you didn't want to, 56-7 is pretty ridiculous as far as the scoring run. I mean, that's 56-7. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, so they showed the highlights from the 2012 game, I think it was, when Oregon, it was 62-51. But that was back and forth.
Yeah.
It was just USC could never catch up.
Right.
It was like that's the game that's felt like the most vibrant experience of a game I've covered. Just because USC fans were all in it. It was back and forth. Everyone's cheering all the time, basically. And midway through the third quarter or late in the third quarter, you just felt the USC fans going, we're never going to catch up.
Yeah.
Like, unless we get a pick six or a special teams turnover, we're never catching up. Last night was completely different.
Yeah.
Chris says, would you think that the offense would be any different under Cliff Kingsbury rather than Harrell? I'm not convinced this offense has produced what we've been promised.
I think so. I just think because I think that Cliff Kingsbury is a more experienced offensive coordinator. I think Graham Harrell is very smart, and I think he's made some really good adjustments at times, but I think he's still a young guy and still finding his way to an extent. And that kind of goes back to, are you supposed to be learning on the job at USC or not?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing would be because of Cliff Kingsbury's acumen coming in, he would have had a different offensive coaching staff altogether. I think he would have demanded more. I don't think, Graham Harrell's more of he's learning, so he kind of got some of the leftover stuff that Clay Helton left him with. I think Kingsbury would probably have his own offensive staff.
Yep. Heather Browning says, Ryan, do the refs have some sort of accountability board that review their calls? The officiating is horrific, and it seems to me that they continue to get worse. Do teams have any recourse?
They get, I think what Clay Helton gets he can complain and stuff, but it's all private.
They send them in, plays in for review to David Coleman, who's the VP of officiating or whatever. I mean, Larry Scott commented last night on the officiating.
Oddly enough, had a presser at halftime.
Weird.
Yeah, I didn't get to catch that one because I went to go meet some people. But that was they'll for the egregious calls at the end of games, they'll do some public thing. They did I think week 2 and week 3. The Pac-12 has done that. They're trying to be more transparent now, but it's still terrible. Heather, I don't know what to tell you. It's bad. It's continues to be bad, and I don't know until you get a new commissioner if it's going to really get better.
And
Okay.
I asked a former player from, I think, the 90s if the officials were this bad when he was around, and he said no.
Oh, interesting.
Uh,
What did I say the name wrong? Or
No, my okay was for the peanut gallery in YouTube that really wants to know about Clay Helton's lip.
So I went and I compared my photos from the first half to second half because people were like, oh, what happened at halftime? He busted his lip open. Did he get punched? EJ Price must have punched him. That if you guys remember that
was
fake story that came
Yes.
out that supposedly EJ Price had punched Clay Helton, and that's why EJ Price wasn't at practice, which never happened.
No.
Which Clay Helton actually gave a great answer to. He's like, well, if he punched me, I wouldn't be here right now.
that was pretty funny.
yeah.
I looked back at my photos. He had a sore on his lip in the first half. He was yelling, and because it's Pac-12 refs, he was yelling at the refs a lot. And I'm sure that exacerbated it to an extent, and that's why it looked a little worse in some of the photos I had later in the game. But yes, he had a sore the entire game. Maybe it was a cold sore, maybe it was whatever. I don't know. Maybe he just split his lip because it was windy out at practice. Those things happen.
Yeah, it looked like he might have had a little something on the side, like under his eye too. So maybe bumped into something. Who knows? I don't know. But what? It looked like there was a little thing under his eye also.
I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Oh, okay.
But and then
Now you're just flaming it.
to reiterate, just because
Yes.
I think people are confusing what Gerard said on the peristyle. We don't know anything about like an altercation in the locker room. There were frustrations, but I don't think anything happened in that sense, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean we don't know, for sure, but there definitely seemed like there was some heated discussions at least. Maybe there was some more than that, but nothing that we've been able to confirm. So
Yeah. So we're not avoiding it, people. We just addressed it earlier in the show. But let's go back to our callers.
yes.
Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, this is David from Chicago. My wife and I recently stopped talking, so now I guess I know what that means. I was told by the guy to keep it really succinct. So my question is why and what? Why the hell is this happening, and what the hell can we do to stop it? Thank you, guys.
Thanks, David. Go have a breaded steak sandwich and some deep dish pizza for us. Why is this happening? Because of poor decisions by leadership. You've made bad decisions over the last, certainly the last decade, longer than that too. It's just kind of built up and built up. You make these bad decisions, and it might take some time. USC is a great program, great athletic department, all that stuff. All this tradition. But you can't just keep having these terrible hires over and over again and expect it to continue to operate at a very high level. So especially the last 2 athletic director hires, complete disasters with Pat Hayden and Lynn Swan. They weren't going to be able to fix anything. They weren't going to be able to change anything. They've never been in a college administrator before. All of that stuff was a problem. Then those hires after Pete Carroll have all been nepotistic and it's just been terrible. Like there's no reason that you should have took Lane Kiffin away from Tennessee after he's been there a year. That was just terrible. Certainly no reason to go get Sark, who might have been ousted there in the next year if he would have lost the Apple Cup that year. Shouldn't have kept Clay Helton. I mean, all these decisions were poor, and they were made by poor decisions at the highest level, bringing in these athletic directors. So that's why this stuff is happening.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. What was the other one? It was like,
What
how do you
do
fix
correct
it? Oh, you make good decisions. Like,
Yeah.
so
Simple.
it's really, I mean, it's not that hard. It's like USC's gone out of their way to make terrible decisions. Like they would make the decisions that no one else would do. Like if you have there's like tract homes, okay? And there's all these homes on this street and they're all about the same. There's all 5,000 square feet. They're all worth, $2 million, whatever. And you've just made these horrible choices for your house, and everyone else, like you picked you wanted light blue and green doors and stuff, and no one else on the block would have picked that. You don't want to make the decision that everyone else on the block that's your equal would not have made. USC makes these choices that only they would make. Nobody at their peer level would make that. No one was going to hire Clay Helton. No one would have hired Pat Hayden. No one would have hired Lynn Swan. Like you can't hire people that no one in your peer group would have hired, and that's what USC kept doing.
They made decisions like they were a MAC team searching for the next great thing rather than being a power blue blood program.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, let's go to our next caller. I believe it is Darren.
Hey, Darren.
Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, I just had a quick thing for you guys. It seems like throughout the whole season, when you watch USC and it's third down and you can tell that someone's bringing a blitz, they don't do well against the blitz on third down. And I'm just wondering, if the offense is so simple, why don't they throw in some simple audibles that the quarterback can do, that Keenan can do, to get out of those looks and get first downs and avoid sacks? Just wondering what you guys think about that.
I think they have those. There's some hot routes and stuff that they're, you try to fill the space behind where the blitzer's coming from. I think they address those things. I don't know what the stats are, though, if USC's been bad. I don't know if they've been bad
For
against the blitz.
season?
Like third down blitz.
I don't have it off the top of my head. What they do have some different hot routes and stuff every once in a while. I remember a Tyler Vaughn's touchdown. There was a signal from Keaton Slovis to him. But one of the things I think is that you have a freshman quarterback, and sometimes he doesn't want to make the wrong decision, so he'll hold on the ball a little bit longer, tries to move around the pocket a little bit more. I think those are all experience things to an extent that he'll only get better at. But I think part of it is on Keaton at the same time. I don't think it's necessarily that there's not routes and stuff in there. They do some slant routes and stuff on third and shorts. It's just kind of reading the defense quickly because it's third down and figuring out even when they're blitzes. Because a lot of teams have been, some of the teams have been showing blitz and then dropping back in 8. And that's another thing where, he had struggled with early in the season. At the BYU, they keep bringing it up over and over, and teams are going to use that against him, but I don't think he's necessarily struggling against that anymore. I thought he's done a good job of, moving in the pocket, adding some extra time to the play, and then finding someone in the pocket or something. I mean, that play he made to throw the first touchdown at Drake London was spectacular and was very Sam Darnold-esque. Instead of running on third down, he found a way, got multiple guys.
He did like a figure 8 in the pocket. It's crazy.
And that first drive, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it was probably 4 third downs that they picked up, and they were of varying lengths and stuff. I mean, it was an 18-play drive.
They were picking up third downs like crazy. Yeah, and shutting down Oregon. Like, they really looked like they had their
16-play drive.
Yeah.
So that tells you that they were able to pick up third downs, because you don't get that many plays if you're getting everything on first and second down.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, let's go to our next caller on the line. Thank you for all the calls tonight, guys.
Wow, it's crazy.
I know. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for calling in.
Okay. This is Bobby in Los Angeles. I have 3 quick points. Number 1, for Ryan, the question becomes, I hate when he puts in Mike Garrett with Hayden and Swan. Mike Garrett brought us Galen Center and brought us Pete Carroll. Mike Garrett wasn't perfect, but in comparison to the 2 morons thereafter, and reminding me of Pat Lynn Swan sitting there saying that Clay Helton had a plan, and that letter that he issued last year, I wish we could revisited that on paper. We understand our deficiencies in coaching, staffing, culture. I mean, this man, Lynn Swan, what he's done to this program is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, and he got away with it without any disassociation, which I wish there's a petition. Number 2, you actually think that Clay Helton can outcoach Herm Edwards? He already lost to Justin Wilcox, and the way the Bruins are looking right now, 5-7 repeated is a definite possibility. And third and final, the most important part, Shotgun, I'm looking forward to your coverage at the end of the week for USC basketball. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. Yeah, for the 3 former football players, Mike Garrett definitely the best. He actually had worked in the department a little bit, so he's been there for a while. But he only knew what was going on there. I think he's better than the other 2 by a mile. But he's still a former football player. He probably still should have been the athletic director at the time. But what he did compared to the other 2, he was aces. Second point was, I forget. Yours is basketball. We don't need to talk about that. What was the second point? I forgot.
Helton already got beat by Justin Wilcox, and there's no.
Yeah. Okay. So this happens a lot with the USC fans that are like, Clay Helton's the worst. He's going to lose every game. Like, no, they're still more talented, way more talented than all those 3 teams. They should probably win them all. They won't. But that's not. Yeah. ASU's been getting killed the last couple of games. Now they have a bye week. They're probably going to play better at home. Colorado looked like crap, and they looked a lot better against USC. Probably should have beat USC that day. So, yeah, I mean, these are going to be coin flips, all of them. But you can't just say, oh, Clay Helton's terrible, so they're going to lose these games. They have better players in all those teams. So I would give a USC an edge in all of them, but just like a slight edge, and they could lose them all.
Yeah, we'll see. Thanks for the call. We
Basketball
appreciate
does
it.
start on Tuesday. They have their first game in case someone wants a reprieve from Clay Helton and football talk.
Yeah. We
Keep it
might
simple
have
and short for Ryan.
We might have to, be talking some basketball. I can't believe I'm saying
Guys.
that. Not here, though. Not now.
You know it's bad when Ryan just said we had to talk about basketball. Wow, that's the most shocking thing
That's
of the
the one with the
weekend.
round ball. That's the round one?
The
Okay.
round one, yes. Shotgun, I'm going to go to you for a second. We had some questions about, you were one of two people to talk to Graham Harrell last night. He left during the main media scrum or presser with Clay Helton. People were kind of put off by Graham Harrell's attitude, I guess, if you will, of how he came off in that interview. What were your thoughts about talking to him and I guess how he presented himself, if you will?
I mean, it's very similar to how he's gone about his business the entire time. I didn't think it was, some other media members were mad that he had left early. I'm like, no, it's the same
He
time
does that every week,
that
yeah.
he normally leaves. He's one of the first people out of the locker room. The coaches usually don't take as long as the players. And his demeanor was pretty much the same. He said that he thought they moved the ball well. The turnovers killed him, which they did. He was asked if he would have ran the ball more, and he pretty directly was just like, no. Or he should he have run the ball more? And he was like, no. And then he went into, they didn't have the depth with the running backs, blah, blah, blah. I asked him about the, using different guys a lot. I didn't realize it at the time that they kind of went away from it as much later in the game, as I talked about earlier, just moving different formations, moving guys around. So I asked him about that, and he said that was just a product of trying to get their best players on the field, try to get the ball in their hands type of thing. After rewatching, then I would have followed up with some other questions, but sometimes it's hard to see all that on the field at the time, watching the game and shooting photos. But
I know some people complained that he was eating, but we really are getting them right after they come out of the food line. So I don't. But
he was finishing. It's not like he would continue to eat during the interview. Like that would have been like, dude, just stop.
Yeah.
He had a chip. Ahead, yeah. He was finishing a chip as he walked up, and because of how the game went, it's like, all right, just start the interview now. Like, start recording now instead of waiting and him getting ticked off or something and decide, okay, you guys aren't asking questions, I'm leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's just finishing a chip at the very beginning of the conversation. So I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I just think it was a guy who got beat. They got beat and they didn't perform well. So I'm sure he was not happy about it. I think you guys sometimes you got to remember these are human beings too.
Yeah.
True.
They're not all robots.
And he's a young coach. I think he's done some really good things at North Texas. I think he's going to be he's going to continue to be a great coach through his career, but this is like his first kind of big time job, and so there's a lot of pressure on him. There's a lot of pressure on the entire coaching staff because he's kind of looked at as a savior, like to save this team. Like they didn't really make a lot of big changes. He was the big change, we had to change your strength and conditioning coach, but as far as coordinators go, he was the one. So they needed him to perform really well, and there's a lot of pressure there.
Yep. We have a question from Alejandra who says, "What's your guys' opinion on the targeting call on Isaiah pull him out?"
Letter of the law, it was a correct call. It's one of those. The Pac-12 sometimes does this where they're very letter of the law, and that's the celebration penalties. If you touch a fan, any interaction, even if you don't, the Oregon-Washington game, he jumps up at a pom-pom, 15-yard penalty. So it's very letter of the law there. It's a play you could have let go, though. Now, should they have let it go? It's hard to say. I thought the other targeting on the other side on Nick Pickett was very similar. It was crown of the head, crown of the helmet, face mask, straight to the face mask. So it's a difficult play for a safety. The Isaiah one was much more difficult to avoid than the Nick Pickett one because Pickett, Keenan Christen's basically being tackled and going down. And
yeah, he looked like he kind of
and went for a big blow. Isaiah's going for a big blow, but he's doing it as the receiver's in motion. He's trying to duck down, and it's hard to get your shoulder underneath as a receiver's catching and trying to bring his body.
Down,
yeah, the Pickett one was weird because he pointed on the watching on the replay. He pointed up to the replay screen to like, hey, watch that. And then you looked at it and like, yeah, you lowered your head and you hit the guy right in the helmet. Like, I don't know what.
Yeah, it wasn't like he was so upset about it.
It was so weird. And that was the quickest review ever. Like, yep, review, that's targeting. We looked at it, 2 seconds, targeting, boom, you were gone. And he was like, No, it wasn't. But yeah, I mean that's tough. I hate seeing guys get kicked out of games. 3 players got kicked out of this game.
Yeah,
so.
it was crazy. LDR says, does SC have a first-round draft pick on this year's team?
Yes.
There's who?
USC.
Who's going to be the first round?
It won't be in this draft, but they do have first round.
I would agree with that.
Number 99.
Jesse says, was the difference in speed between the two teams as noticeable live as it seemed on TV? If so, is that a strength and conditioning issue?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. There was no big difference.
Yeah, I didn't see.
Their skill players are fast, so are USC's.
Yeah. I didn't see. Yeah, it was big.
That's a
USC
very
did a pretty good job of stopping the run. Like CJ Verdell, if you watched him last week, watch him run. He was running all over the place, and he wasn't able to do that this time.
That was a very Bruin troll comment from you, Jesse. But the time when Oregon looked like they were running the most was when they were throwing passes in the flats, and you had interior defenders trying to chase after them. So yeah, they're chasing them from behind to an extent, and they're trying to get upfield. But it wasn't like they turned the corner every single time we're gone. I mean, Christian Rector ran a guy down at the sideline. I thought the USC defense did an okay job with that. It was not a noticeable speed difference there.
Someone asked, is Keenan Kristen ready to be running 20 times a game?
Oh, I got Keenan and Keaton in my mind.
Keenan Kristen.
I mean, I don't see why not. Like he ran for 14 times against Colorado or something like that, and then what did he have
15
yesterday?
15 for 79. So I mean,
that's more than even Marquis Stepp was doing. And they were kind of bringing him along slow. I mean, he's sort of forced into action, but it didn't seem like he was tired or slowing or anything.
He had 15, and the 2 other running backs had 5 combined, Dominic Davis and Quincy Junti, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown had 1.
Yeah.
So if you give Ra, 4 or 5 more carries, then, I think bring that number, that discrepancy between pass and run down a little bit. I think it would have helped a little bit. But he could get 20 carries. The thing is, he's not going to break a ton of tackles, so you need to be able to create some holes for him so that speed can show. And I thought he had some really nice runs getting to the edge and turning the corner a little bit. But again, some of those, he gets the corner and you go, okay, maybe that's something special is going to happen, and it would end up in a 5-yard run. Because when you run wide, you got to run a lot longer, a lot farther to get that yardage, because you got to go wide and then up. So I think that's the difference. He was running the ball a long time at times, but not getting a ton of yards, if that makes sense.
And it's a big ask because you don't have a complimentary back to go along with him. You don't have the guy that can soften up the defense. It's all on him, and that's tougher. I mean, you see those guys that are, faster dudes. A lot of times they have a big back that can kind of give the defense a couple of blows and then soften him up a little bit. And he doesn't have that. So I thought he ran pretty hard though in that game.
Yeah, and Quincy Junti had 3 carries. He's a 210-pound back, so he's the best you got right now to do that. But how many times are you going to give your former walk-on the ball that's your fifth-string running back?
Yeah, and I think Kristen had, and even that first drive, I believe there was 2 short yardage situations. He picked up the first down both times. So they trusted him from the beginning.
Eddie says, how much did last night's loss hurt from a recruiting perspective on a scale from 1 to 10?
I mean, the thing is there's a lot more at it than just one game. Gerard always says this, that one game doesn't change a recruit's opinion, basically. So there's a lot more to it, but it definitely doesn't help.
Yeah.
So it's in the 2 to 3 range, I would say, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it's all that important. It's sort of like USC is walking around, like as far as like the USC recruiting machine, it's like a dude walking around. It's like picture like The Walking Dead. You're walking around and the guy's like lost his arm and then he sprained his ankle. It's like, yeah, I mean, it hurt that he sprained his ankle, but he was already walking around without an arm. So that's sort of like the damage has already been done. There's just sort of like you piled on a little bit last night.
Interesting analogy there.
Like that one? Let's just made that one up too.
Sure. Let's go back to our callers. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, this is Edward calling you from Seattle, Washington.
What's up, Edward?
Hey, I really enjoy your guys' show. I was a student there when Pete Carroll was the coach, and everybody wants Clay Helton gone, so do I, but Clancy Pendergast has to be gone as well. I've never seen such pathetic defense from, a USC team. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think people talk about like, well, I like Graham Harrell, so maybe the new coach, it's like, if you're going to get rid of the head coach, you assume you're going to get rid of everybody, and there would be maybe a couple of exceptions if the new head coach comes in and wants some continuity for recruiting or whatever, or I think that's where you're going here. So, like, if you're getting rid of Clay Helton, you're getting rid of Clancy Pendergast. You're getting rid of John Baxter. You're essentially getting rid of everybody, unless there's going to be an exception or two that the new head coach would want to bring in.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say like you have like get rid of Clay Helton, but keep Clinton. Like, no, it's like you're getting rid of this staff.
The whole thing.
The whole thing is getting thrown out. Maybe someone says, hey, I like what Graham Harrell's done. We want to keep him on, or whatever. You like somebody on the staff. You like Greg Burns. You've done a really good job with this young secondary, and you didn't have a great defensive back candidate that the new coach wanted to bring in. You keep him on, but it's all of it has to be up to the new coach. You don't like say, well, we're going to hire somebody, but we want you to keep these guys. Like, no, that's stuff USC's done in the past. They wanted to hire people with like, but we got to do it USC's way. Like, no, you hire someone and let them do their thing. If they want to get rid of everybody, scorched earth, you let them do that.
Yep.
And those two guys are connected, Clay Helton and Clancy Pendergast. If they wanted to break it up, they could have done it last year after the 5-7 season when they said whatever Lynn Swan's statement was. We should just post that behind us.
That would be an awesome one. Yeah.
We should have this up as a graphic, just all the other things. I think Wilner tweeted it out last night as well. The
culture, scheme, personnel, staff, and
penalties,
discipline.
Something like that.
So if you're going to do it, and then especially when you bring up the Notre Dame, how they had done it with Brian Kelly previously, then that would have been the time to separate them. Since they have not, they're tied together basically. So if Clay Helton is fired, then Clancy Pendergast would be fired. If Clay Helton stays, I think he would still keep Clancy Pendergast.
Probably,
I would find it hard to believe that he would separate from him.
You keep saying these crazy things, though.
Anyway, let's move on to our next caller, whose name I think is Keely. I'm not sure if it's a troll or not. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision. Hello?
Hi. Hi. I'm calling with one of the questions that I just heard. So it's a duplicate, and that's how last night would affect recruiting. And you answered that question. But I started SC with John McKay, and I really miss the pride and the tradition we had in those days. What's wrong with getting a big name hire? We've got the money. What's going on?
Well, first, do they have the money? How many other investigations, lawsuits, and who's ponying up the money? Are the boosters willing to pay the money? Because that's where the money comes from, not from the school itself. The school has to pay the base salary, but the buyouts and stuff, that usually comes from boosters. Are the boosters willing to pay for it? Those are the big questions, and those are ones that kind of get forgotten about when people say, well, Urban Meyer definitely. Urban Meyer is going to demand a high contract and a lot of money for his assistants and power. And are people in the athletic department willing to give up power, and are boosters willing to pay the money? Those things all play into it if you hire a new coach, because you got to pay the buyouts for the old staff first.
Right. But the thing is, and this is what people overlook, and you're right, you have to go out and hire someone big. The USC's avoided doing that because of the power issue. They didn't want – Clay Helton was someone that was going to be happy to be there, and he wasn't going to rock the boat. You need someone that comes in and rocks the boat and puts their system in, and it's a winning system, and it's going to be painful for some of the people around there. Like, oh, my job's going to change and all that stuff. That's what they didn't want. That's what you need. But if you get someone like Urban Meyer, you make money by the time that introductory press conference is over, because season tickets that were down 20,000 units will go right back up. Donations to the university and the athletic department go right back up. Someone like that, yeah, is he going to have like an $8 or $9 million salary? Yes. Nick Saban has that. Dabo Swinney has that. You know why? Because they're worth it. And you get someone like that, they're paying for it. It's a bargain what you're going to have to pay to the money that you would make in the athletic department. But you're right. They need to go out and get someone like that, and they've avoided it at all costs for the last whatever.
That's the big question. Is we've always wondered, well, what's important to the university and to this administration. And the interesting thing in the Willie Taggart statement is that they said it was the best move for the university, which you wonder if USC has that mindset, right?
And they're going to pay a huge buy. Like, that might be a record buyout.
And that's where the boosters come in.
Yeah, but they still think it's the right move, because the way it was going, it's not going the right way. That's why USC needed to make this move before. I mean, that's why you shouldn't have been here in this position in the first place. Just having someone that's been a head coach before, is it that much? Is that difficult to ask? No, but it's for USC, it has been. So you're right. love the call. I don't know if your name is Keely also.
We never
but-
got confirmation.
Yeah.
But
If it's another Keely, that's crazy. Yeah.
shouts to the Keeleys.
But thanks for the call, yeah.
Thank you for the call. Let's go to our next caller on the line. I believe it is Eddie from Whittier. Hello, you're on live on television.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Hello.
Over here it's not going too well. Still bummed out from yesterday.
Sorry, Eddie.
But you know, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this because yeah, you guys say it's free therapy, but it's kind of like pointless therapy at this point now. You know what I mean? It's like I can't take out my frustration on you guys. But my point right now is why are these players posting videos after like highlights? Why are they celebrating? After Kyle Ford, I'm glad he got a touchdown, but I saw the rest of the bench like jumping around and excited like if we were winning or something, and to me I'm like, dude, aren't you guys embarrassed? Like where's the the spirit, where's the like, it's embarrassing. Like I don't get it. These kids are not buying into anything. Clay Helton said that he was going to step back on play calling to take care of penalties and everything else that he said he would, and none of that's changed. Nothing's changed. I know we could keep going over and over and over like we've all been, but it's like you had one task that you said you were going to do and you can't even fulfill that task. My thing is, do these players have are they embarrassed or not? Like, yeah, you could fight for Clay Helton all you want, but where's the embarrassment? Like, why? That's how frustrated I am. I don't get it. Why are you showboating yourself when you're out there getting killed? Or you make one play and you celebrate. Yeah, cool. Like, that's your job. Like, I don't celebrate at my job until the defense.
To be fair, Eddie, they don't get paid, but that's,
True.
Well, thanks for the call, Eddie. Yeah,
thanks, Eddie.
I think those are fair criticism of Clay Helton because he was supposed to fix the discipline stuff. He was backing away from the offense, and that hasn't changed. And we're seeing tons of penalties. You're seeing a ton of turnovers. I think more than you had last year. I mean, the turnover margin is the worst.
I haven't
in
even
the
looked it
Pac-12
up today. What they're
it was the worst in the Pac-12 going into that game, and obviously it's worse now.
They were 117, I think, going into the game.
So they're probably going to be worse, because it was a 3-1, so like 3 added to it, right?
4-1.
4-1. 4 turnovers by there. As far as social media stuff's kind of weird, but if you go on Instagram and see some of the players, a lot of times it's like during a game, like a family member is watching the TV and say Kanai Mauga gets a sack, they'll put that on Instagram and they'll tag him. And then after the game, he'll share that on his story or something, and it's like, yeah, he had a sack in the first play of the game or whatever it was. And then they end up getting smoked later. But, are you going to begrudge this kid for putting, I don't know. I mean, I'm not, it's tough. They don't get paid for this,
Social media is one thing, and just to answer these real quick, turnover margin USC is now negative. Is now 121st in the country out of 130. They are -1 per game.
Wow.
-1 per game. That's terrible. Turnovers lost, they're 119th. Passes intercepted, they're 124th. And a new addition to the this is terrible. There's more. There's more, folks. Fewest penalty yards, they're 118th in the country.
Worst infomercial ever, Shotgun.
First downs defense, 122nd in the country. And the new addition I was going to say is kickoff return defense is now 127th in the country.
Oof.
Hashtag special teams. But John Baxter, he has a lot of confidence in. We know that.
Now, back to social media and stuff. Social media, it's a kind of a gray area to an extent for me. If you're posting, you're excited after the game, yeah, that's an issue. If you're basically what you're saying, basically what it is on Instagram is a retweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're retweeting something that someone has sent to you, I don't have a big issue with it. If you're posting your own highlights, someone has clipped out your highlights and then you're posting it as a post, I would have an issue with it. On the sideline.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get to.
Okay.
I run back and forth during a game. Sideline to sideline until Ryan buys me the big lens. So when you're going behind the benches, you're looking for reaction shots. You're looking for coaches, yelling or just anything that's evocative with emotion. You're trying to get that shot. I'm going by, and in one sequence, I'm not going to name the player, but one sequence was the Juwan Johnson touchdown, the third one.
I was going to say which one?
Because he had 3. The one where Herbert had plenty of
The
time.
fight down.
Had plenty of time to throw. Chris Steele actually fell down on the play, I believe, from what I was told. And Johnson's open over the middle. Then he runs with it, dives in the end zone over a couple of USC defenders. And he throws the fight down, apparently. So I'm shooting the entire sequence, get some good shots of the touchdown. Dejon Benton's on the field at the time, the freshman. He's really angry. I try to get a shot of that and miss it. Start shooting a different player. They're coming off the field, and they're just kind of glaring at me a little bit, and then they smile and, like, pose. And I was like, are you – it's now 40 – this is at 49 to 17.
17, yeah.
And you're going to pose for a photo? And now I also saw other photographers. I don't like pose shots. I don't like the shots coming out of the tunnel. I like action shots or something that has emotion in it, raw emotion, not someone posing. That's just my personal opinion as a photographer. So when guys start posing, I usually turn away unless it's like the big group shot, like in between the third and fourth quarter of the Colorado game when everybody freaked out last year. But I was going by, and one photographer was shooting shots, and it's around the same time, or it's in the fourth quarter, and guys are like, there's a couple guys that are like flexing and smiling for the camera, and I'm just like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like that's what matters to you at that point. That's what you're saying. That by your actions, you are saying this photo matters more to me than the fact we're getting the shit kicked out of us.
Yeah.
Just getting run over constantly. I want to make sure I get a good flick for later. That's what matters to some people.
And I think some of it, too, goes from the top. That's something that's being tolerated.
It's a whole culture thing.
It's a full. Yeah.
It's funny because the Mike Leach stuff that came out when he was like kind of being critical of his team and calling him like fat and lazy or whatever, some of the journalists pointed out that would follow Mike Leach a lot is one of his mantras was, you're either something about allowing it, you're either like enabling it to happen or you're allowing it to happen, something like that. Like anything that's happening in your program, you either you're putting up with it or allowing it or whatever it is.
Either teaching it or enabling it. Basically.
Yeah, so something like that. So it's like you're allowing that behavior to happen where there's no consequences if one of the strength coach or something sees people posing, you're like, you're gone. Get on the cart, get the hell out of here. Like something like that happening. So yeah, man, I wish I remembered the exact Leach quotes, but that was basically what you're saying. Like it's either if it's happening, you're allowing it to happen under your watch.
Yep. Gerard says we have to put Chalk on an 8-second delay now. Let's go to.
We're allowed to.
You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Is Mike Leach's quote?
There you go.
Okay, you're coaching it or allowing it to happen. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Eddie. Glad we could be a little bit of therapy for you there. Let's go to our last caller in the queue. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Hello.
Quick question. I'm calling out of Dallas. I'm a big fan. Been listening to the show since you guys had Harvey Hyde on the coach. I'm trying to figure out. I've seen Florida State let go of Willie today. What's holding us up outside of our athletic director not officially being named to get a head start and have to deal with the Florida State, possibly Michigan, if they let him go, even though he had a couple big wins last week? What's holding us up? We all know Hilton's gone. Like recruiting in December it's huge. So if we can get a good name in there, we can possibly save our recruit.
Yeah, December 18th is a big. Yeah, thanks for the call. December 18th is a big deal. I do think it's all about the athletic director stuff, and USC had won a couple games in a row. I don't think Dave Roberts really wanted the interim athletic director wanted to make that move. I think there was a possibility that something could have happened this weekend, but USC's fired their last two coaches mid-season. I don't think they wanted to do that if they didn't have to. So if they have an AD hire imminent, then I think there's a bunch of reasons not to make some kind of move now. Now, if we don't hear from this week, if they don't make the announcement, and they go out and lose to Arizona State, then maybe something happens again. USC going to ASU, bad things seem to happen to coaches when embattled coaches when they go from USC to Tempe for some reason. But yeah, I think the timing right now is just really weird because who the athletic director is supposed to be. They're finalizing all that. Do we hear who it's going to be tomorrow? Timing wise, it all sort of happened with having this blowout loss and not having a permanent AD, but maybe one coming in within like 24, 48 hours. So it was a weird time, I would say.
Yep. Alrighty, thanks for the call.
I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
Just to go back real quick, because Eddie brought up Kyle Ford's touchdown. I have much less of an issue with teammates celebrating each other, especially a guy like Kyle Ford, who has gone through a whole process with the knee injury and stuff to come back. And last night was his first time playing receiver.
Yeah, that's his first catch.
First catch, yeah.
And it happened to be a touchdown,
So I have much less of a problem with guys celebrating others. There's some guys like not Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown. When he scores a touchdown, there's no emotion on his face. You don't see anything. He
expected to
as
do
he
it,
comes back to the sideline. However, when Drake London scored, that was the biggest smile I've seen from Amon-Ra St. Brown this season because he was super excited for his teammate. Those are things you want to see.
Yeah.
Even in a blowout, you still want your guys to be excited for their teammates, picking their teammates at encouragement, not solo posing.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. Jeff on YouTube says, did Keaton Slovis look overwhelmed last night?
I don't think he looked overwhelmed. He didn't get a ton of help in some certain areas. I think the protection could have been better, and he didn't play great.
No, he was frustrated at times, like when Tyler Vaughn's got knocked down on that one interception. And, it's sort of like there was a series of bad things that happened, but I don't think they piled on. They were, one after another. I mean, that one, not seeing the linebacker and throwing that pick six was certainly a big deal. But the other ones are just like, there were kind of weird things that happen on those plays. He was out there trying to make things happen. That first touchdown that Shotgun mentioned about where he did like a figure eight in the huddle. He kind of tried to do that later, and he ended up getting hit and fumbling. So I mean, I didn't think he was out there looking overwhelmed or anything.
And Harrell kind of said that as like he holds on the ball. Someone asked him if he holds on the ball so long, type of thing. He said, well, when it goes well, people are like, oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
When it doesn't go well, they're like, oh, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I think that he does a good job of buying some extra time in the pocket. Now it's a work in progress of knowing in college how long that clock lasts and knowing who's on that backside. If it's a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau who's really quick off the edge, then you got to know a little bit more. You got to speed it up a little bit more. Now he did a good job. There's probably 4, 5, 6 times where people were probably watching and going, "Oh no, he's about to get sacked," and he rolls out right before that and throws it. He had some pretty good spatial awareness in that game, but it's something that's going to be a work in progress for him.
In that sense, we had a question from someone who I forgot who asked, but they said, what does the season look like at this point if JT Daniels is still healthy and QB1?
I mean, I go back to I think they would have won the Washington game. I think they would have won the BYU game.
Yeah.
I've explained it on previous shows, so I don't need to hear all your freak outs right now over this. But I think that Keaton played really well in that Notre Dame game. The game last night, would they have been better with JT? Does JT take better care of the ball? Maybe, maybe not. I didn't think that there was glaring things like it was in the BYU game or the Washington game, where I thought the JT skill set would have played up a lot better. So maybe the same. I mean, the Tyler Vaughn's interception, JT's throwing that one too. Receiver got knocked down.
Yeah,
you can't really blame for that.
And to be fair, does JT beat Utah? I don't know. Like that was that wasn't like a typical
the YOLO raid.
There was a YOLO raid. That was a little different in that game. So I don't know. I mean, the way that would they defend JT Daniels a little bit differently. That's the head scratcher of the whole year. You get Matt Fink come in there and play really well and win that game. But he's a little more unorthodox. Do you win the more straightforward, head to head against Utah? I don't know.
Yeah, in that sense, I believe it was Gerard who actually tweeted about it. As far as turnovers go, I think he said one turnover, a couple turnovers, maybe it's the player. If it's systematic, like we've seen this season, how much do you blame that on the coaches and their ability to fix things in practice rather than, hey, you have a rookie quarterback who's making mistakes? Where does that blame lie, in your opinion?
I mean, you've had 3 different games where your quarterback's thrown 3 interceptions, and 2 different guys have done that. So it's I think there could be some value there for what you're saying.
Yeah. In that sense, Trek Ranger said all the injuries, all the missed tackles, all the mistakes, and not playing an entire game all season goes directly to how we practice. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the changes that weren't made, we talked about after, should have been made after 2017, after the Lynn Swann, comments and speech or whatever, then, they should have been more changes then. But I really think the approach, you needed to change things a little bit more too. And if you feel like the team wasn't being physical early on, then you step it up and you do an extra day of pads and you do more full tackling or any full tackling. I think that's something as a coach you need to do things different sometimes, and that's to a fault. I think Clay Helton will have a plan. They come up with a plan in like July and August, and they stick with the plan for the whole year. And they're just like, well, that was our plan, so we're going to go with it, as opposed to this wasn't really working, so we're going to do something different. And that's just not been their MO. And I think you have a more experienced head coach. We've talked to people that have done it. Like, yeah, sometimes you just walk in and go, this is wrong, and they'll do something crazy, like throw all your assistant coaches off the field, and you're going to make everyone do something like stuff like that happens in football, and it hasn't really with Clay Helton and USC. So I think the practice approach, I think you needed to make some adjustments there, and they've just always kind of stuck to the plan.
We've reached the half-hour mark, so let's get some rapid-fire questions and final questions. Ryan, I don't think we've given Periscope any love at all.
There's been a lot of stuff on Periscope, but a lot of comments though. People are like commenting as we go. I'll try to find some questions.
I'd like to point out that when Oregon went up 14-10, I tweeted turnovers, penalties, missed tackles, because it was missed tackle on that touchdown, or 2 missed tackles. It's the themes that have remained the same under Clay Helton. And Eddie brought this up. I thought it was a great call by Eddie. But it's the same results as well. And those things you said you're going to change in the offseason. I'm going to be the CEO. We're going to focus on these things. They haven't changed. So that tells you the direction that the program is the trajectory the program is at right now.
And something that people in my mentions never let me forget. How many times have we heard Clay Helton say that we'll correct these mistakes?
Yeah.
We'll fix these mistakes going forward.
93065 Trojan says in all caps, like, how is it you 3 media folks can figure that out, yet these professional coaches can't or won't? Why? I do think some of it is you've been taught a certain way, and I think Clay Helton learned a lot from his dad, who was, as far as win-loss record goes, was not a very successful head coach, and they have a philosophy, and you kind of stick with it. And it's not always you're not always making adjustments to that. this is what you believe in, and you go with it. Sometimes to a fault, to the point where you're not winning anymore. You need to make a change, and they haven't done that.
It's important in coaching and teaching, both similar. It's important to be consistent. However, you have to know when to make adjustments. Consistency works great. When I did student teaching, I had 6th graders, I had 8th graders and 9th graders. So I went from top of the totem pole in middle school to bottom of the totem pole in high school. And it's just one grade, it's 1 year, but there's such a different because of that. And you have to make adjustments as you go. And coaching is the same way. If you're coaching at Alabama versus Western Michigan, you have to make adjustments as you go, type of thing. So I think that's something. It's important to be consistent, but know when to change things up. And I don't think this coaching staff has done a good job of doing that.
Yep. Jasper Smith, I know we don't do hypotheticals, but he said, for a new hire, would you want a defensive-minded coach or an offensive-minded coach?
I don't care. Like this, a coach, like a coach that's good, like a coach that has experience, that's won at a high level, and is good. Like if he's defensive or offensive, it doesn't matter to me. Like just someone that's proven, a proven winner is what you want.
Would you rather go defensive just because the last couple have been offensive?
I'd rather go proven winners. I like if he's
yes. Well, that's a given, Ryan. Hopefully,
really that doesn't matter to me at all. Like that, I could care less. It's more about if Urban Meyer is more of a defensive coach, then yes, or whoever. But Urban Meyer is the number one choice for me. But like a Bob Stoops, I think he's more like I think he could be good, more of a defensive guy. But someone that's been a college head coach at a very high level, if he's won a national championship, that's great, or been in that conversation, that's the kind of person that I would want.
Yes.
Oh, are we talking about athletic director because that's the job that's open? I would want someone who's been an athletic director previously and has experience hiring and firing.
It's not that hard. Like, get people that are good at the jobs you're hiring them for,
True.
Don't hire short order cooks to be your surgeon. That's all we want,
LDR says, will this year's SC-UCLA game matter, knowing it's a crosstown rivalry? Do you guys think fans will be excited to attend the game?
It always matters. It's a rivalry game. That matters a lot. It's huge in LA. Yeah, you want to win that game. Like UCLA was 3-8 last year, and that mattered. So or 3-9. They're 2-8, and then they were 3-9 at the season.
2-9 coming into the game.
Yeah, I think they were 2-8, then they lost to like Stanford later or something.
Yeah, they had a game afterwards. Anytime, it doesn't matter if you're both 10-0 or you're both 0-10. Whether you're playing for the Super Bowl or the toilet bowl, you want to beat your rival.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's important.
All these games matter because ASU, like we talked about with Herm Edwards, doing some better things and being able to recruit Southern California, you could lose some dudes there. UCLA, certainly you want to beat them. And Cal, what is it, like 13 in a row or something? USC had beat Cal, and then losing last year. You don't want to lose 2 in a row to Cal. Like there's reasons to win all of these games. Besides, like, it's not to make the playoff. It's just these games are important because they're important.
In that sense, LDR wants to know, what do we think the final record would be for the next 3 games? I asked Shotgun in the podcast last week, do you think USC will be bowl eligible?
I said yes.
Yeah, I think 2-1. My preseason prediction was 7-5. I'm gonna stick with 7-5. I think they go 2-1 down the stretch. They'll lose one of those games. They shouldn't lose any of them, but they'll lose one, I think.
And you're not going to place which one they lose?
Right now, I'd put it to UCLA.
Interesting.
Even though that's at home. I mean, both of those other, Cal looks so awful without Chase Garbers. And I don't know if he's going to be back, but I don't even know at this point if he comes back. They're in such a rut. ASU is sort of on the decline right now too, but we'll see. I think they'll probably bounce back, sort of like what Colorado did when USC played them 2 weeks ago. But UCLA is playing good football right now, and they can run up. We saw Joshua Kelly last year almost get 300 yards. I think they're going to be pretty powerful. So I think they're going to lose one, and if I had to guess, it'd probably be UCLA.
Shotgun, I'm going to come to you in a second for any last minute questions if you see any, and Ryan, some Periscope if you see any. But I just want to kind of end off with this question, because I asked this to Dan in Instant Analysis last night. But Ryan, when things are kind of turbulent in the USC program, people kind of look to figures like you and Dan as kind of the lighthouse in the storm.
Us?
Sure. How do you see these next couple of weeks playing out? How does this go forward if you're a USC fan? What should they look forward to happening?
Yeah, and it's funny, but people do that. I mean, we've had so many people come up to us. Like, I went to the 1923 club at halftime yesterday, and just so many people coming up and talking about how important we've been to them, and it's crazy what people.
The guy we met last night, who we have a picture of.
Yeah, you want to put
I did.
Jack is it Jack Wilson, right?
Yes,
yeah.
One of the flyers.
He flew one of those helicopters over there, and Dan Weber, I was talking to somebody, media people on the field, and Dan Weber pulls me aside like, hey, one of the pilots wants to meet you, and he's just like, I love this stuff. I hope if you come to San Diego, you want to come golf with me and stuff. I mean, he was great. And
he didn't offer to golf with me. I'm sad.
Oh, well, I don't know. He knows I golf or whatever. But
I can't golf, so that's fine.
Yeah, but
just kidding.
Stuff like that happens a lot. And so you don't realize it, but people do kind of look to you for some kind of guidance or whatever. But I think you just have to have some faith in Carol Folt, that if she's the right hire, she's going to bring in the right people. And just the good thing is the bar is pretty low. Like, USC was so bad at making important hires that just doing a mediocre job is going to be a big improvement. There's some potential for home run stuff, but just being competent at hiring will put USC in a much better spot. And USC has those inherent advantages that you get a couple good people in place, it's ready. Like, it's a powder keg. It's ready to explode. Just get the right people there. And they just so avoided doing that in the past. Like, they just didn't want to bring in somebody that was good at their job. And I don't know why. It's just more people protecting their little fiefdoms and stuff. I think if you trust Carol Folt to come in and sort of fix that and say, look, we're not doing this status quo anymore. We're going to bring in people from the outside. They're going to tell you how things have been done and successful, and they're going to implement those systems at USC. And with all the resources and all the advantages USC has, that should be a light at the end of the tunnel.
If that's what the administration wants. Again, it goes back to that. We brought it up ad nauseum for the last 5 years, is what does the administration, the people above the head coach or assistant coaches or players on the field, what do they want from the football program in particular to be for this school? Is it just another program? Is it the flagship program of the school? Is it something that sells the school to, international students? Because a football program can do that. Same as a basketball program can do in March Madness, and you see all the skyrocketing application numbers, if that's what they want, which means you have to invest in it. And that means time, resources, money. That means going out and finding someone, that's more expensive, but that also means providing resources for support staff and all those things that you've seen a program like Clemson. What was Clemson 6 years ago? You know what they were known for? Clemsoning it.
Yeah.
Because they would mess something up all the time. Like, oh, they were going to have this great thing, they're great upset, and they blow it. That's what they were known for. What happened, though? Dabo Swinney came in, and he wasn't supposed to be the guy. You know, that can happen. Pete Carroll wasn't supposed to be the guy at USC. You know, Dabo Swinney comes in, he makes things happen, and when he starts winning a little bit, they start investing more and more into it, and that's in facilities, that's in the support staff, that's in having a life coach on the support staff. And that's the only job I really need, guys. I need to
You're going to be a life coach. Nice. Well, you're bringing everyone down.
I don't know if I'd be good at it, but
yeah. But you have to trust Carroll to change out the administration, the athletic department, so they want that. That's what you kind of have to have some faith that they're going to do. And then the way she defended the basketball program and stuff, and Roy Williams there when she was at North Carolina, you think she'd probably do the same sort of thing at USC. But we'll see. This is big. This is a big time right now as far as getting a real athletic director in there and then seeing what they do with the football program.
Yep, it is a big wait and see for sure. That's why you should stick to uscfootball.com for all your news and coverage. Plug. Shotgun, any final questions, thoughts that you want to break in?
Joan just said revenue. The administration wants revenue. Well, you know what you got to do? You got to spend money to make money. That's usually the way it works.
True.
Breaking news, Trek Ranger said Brian Kelly's still in the field, Ryan.
Brian Kelly's still out there?
He's still in the field on that onside kick.
Someone get him.
Nice.
Someone go get him.
LDR said, who's the top recruit left in California? Justin Flo is still the top remaining uncommitted recruit. If you're looking at guys that have USC in their list, at least, I mean, Justin Flo was supposed to be there. I didn't actually see him myself, but Gerard said that he and his brother were supposed to be there. If he was there, so he's still looking at them. But the other guy that's still in their list, has USC in their list, C.J. Stroud, the quarterback from Rancho Cucamonga, who's getting presented his All-America jersey tomorrow. He was at the game as well on Saturdays too, so that's probably the top recruit for USC. I think there was one more.
Ryan, any Periscope love? Shout out to Periscope. Thank you to everyone who watches. Despite
Jared Cruz said, why was USC wearing black socks? Was it for Helton's last game in L.A., like a funeral?
I don't know. Yeah, Dan Weber hates the black socks.
I thought it looked good.
But I don't really like them, to be honest. But I
don't care.
I don't care much about stuff. Bob,
that's just stop right there. I just don't care that much about stuff.
Clip that.
Yeah, I don't care about like uniform things. Like people care. Like Bob wants to know chances Carol Folt will overrule or veto Urban Meyer hiring. I think that's the thing you have to look at is that if she doesn't want it, then who's the athletic director, and if that's who the person wants, what kind of case can you make to the president of the university? Like, here's all the reasons why. That's what you have to do, and that's why the stronger the athletic director that ends up getting hired, the better chances the football team succeeds, because then you can go the extra mile to get whatever it is you need to make the program win.
Yep.
Joe Trojans. So, are we all UCLA fans this weekend? UCLA plays Utah this weekend, I believe.
Oh, dude, I mean, you can't worry about that stuff. Like,
they're fans. They're allowed to worry about
Ryan.
Trying to get to a Pac-12 championship.
We talked about this earlier. Like, that's not what you need to focus on. Like,
but you were team enjoyed the season, Ryan, just a week ago.
Yeah, enjoy the season. Try to win your game. Don't worry about, well, if UCLA can beat Utah, then, you got to fix all the stuff in your own backyard. Like, you can't really worry about what your neighbors are doing right now. So I don't think that's
they can
realistic.
still root.
They're fans.
The question is, do you root for UCLA, your rival, to help your own chances? And that's always a difficult conundrum.
You root for Jaden Daniels to throw more picks than Keaton Slovis. That's what you want to root for.
G-Mart brought out a good point. Gary Bryant Jr. is also still an uncommitted prospect.
Yeah.
He's a top 15 prospect as well, wide receiver from Centennial. And I had, I think, one more, which was, did Kanai Mauga give the Oregon running back's towel back to him after he tackled the towel instead of the running back?
Oops.
I thought he played pretty well. I thought he made some
nice plays early. That was a big missed tackle though, because that could have been because that would have been back-to-back tackles for loss near the goal line, forcing a 3rd and 5 or so.
Yeah.
And instead they missed a couple on that one. Jalen Redd, Rancho Cucamonga as well.
Mm-hmm. A lot of, that's the thing when you look
he
across.
Celebrated with Josh Delgado, who finished at IMG but went to Bosco.
Yeah, and Mikel Wright,
Valencia, and Antelope Valley.
Thomas Graham. I interviewed him when he committed.
Rancho Cucamonga, former USC commit. Diamador Lenore and Nick Pickett, also in that secondary were both from Salesian,
Yeah.
LA Salesian. So
Thomas Graham was dropped by USC, and
True.
he's started ever since he got to
that was
Oregon.
Ronnie
so-
Bradford special.
Yeah,
But
a lot of dudes on the Oregon team that you saw that USC was recruiting and either gave up on or lost, and yeah, it's a big deal. That's why you need to get a real coach come in and just fix things, and they will.
Yep. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. We're back with our normal schedule Thursday to preview USC going on the road to take on ASU.
Did we just do an hour and 40 minutes?
We did. It's that type of time.
We had like 20 phone calls or something. That was crazy.
No, we actually had 40.
40 phone calls?
We had 40 phone calls. Sorry if you didn't get through. We tried to get through them, but only so many calls we can take in a show. But thank you for everyone who called in, commented, all that stuff. We appreciate it. Sorry about Facebook if you're watching this late. We'll get that sorted out going forward. Ryan, do you anticipate any emergency podcasts or shows this week? How
Well,
about
so if there's a potential for an athletic director announcement early in the week, we will see. So just kind of stay tuned to uscfootball.com for that. I don't know if that would warrant a podcast, but we'll do, we're going to
maybe
do
not an emergency one.
Yeah, we'll do our regular Harvey Hyde podcast tomorrow, talking about stuff. And we'll do, the Dan Weber one on Tuesday with me and Keely and Dan. But that might change depending on what happens with the athletic director hire. But I don't anticipate. Clay Helton did his conference call tonight, so I don't think he's going to be fired. I don't think they'd let him do that and fire him tomorrow or anything. But the big news would be this week if an athletic director is hired.
Yep. So stay tuned for that. We got you covered, but that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate you guys. That's Shotgun. That's Ryan. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all on Thursday. Bye.